Before you hear my story, let me ask you something. What would you do if the person you loved more than anyone in the world humiliated you in front of everyone? What if you gave up your own dreams to build theirs, only to be mocked and tossed aside like you never mattered? I stayed quiet for far too long. But when I finally learned the truth, everything changed. This is how I went from being invisible to unforgettable. Before I continue, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Helen Carter. I'm years old. I'm a widow, an artist, and a grandmother. I've never lived a big life and I never needed one. I lived quietly in a modest little home in Montpelier, Vermont. My days were spent painting, listening to the wind, and thinking about the people I loved, mostly Madison. Madison is my granddaughter. I raised her like my own daughter. My daughter, Lauren, had Madison when she was young. She was overwhelmed working 2 jobs just to keep her head above water. So Madison spent her early years with me, finger painting in the kitchen, riding her tricycle down our cracked driveway, helping me pick dandelions for little bouquets that wilted in jelly jars by the window. She used to call me Nana, not Grandma, not Granny, just Nana. When she was little, I was her whole world. Then the years passed. She grew up, and the world took over. iPads replaced storybooks. Social media replaced those quiet kitchen painting sessions. I stood back proud, but quietly heartbroken, watching her life turn into something I barely recognized. But I never stopped loving her. Not once. For 12 years, I did something she never knew about. Every single month, I set aside whatever I could from my fixed income, birthday money, grocery savings. I even skipped medications sometimes to build a college fund for her. I knew she dreamed of going to CalArts, that big, shiny, expensive school in California that all the artsy kids dream about. The tuition was insane. The living costs were worse, but I believed in her dream more than she did. Even though she had stopped painting years ago. Even though she never talked about it anymore. Even though she rarely visited unless she needed something, still, I believed. For her 18th birthday, I wanted to give her more than money. I wanted to remind her of who she used to be. Of who we used to be. So I painted her something, not just a painting, a memory on canvas. I spent weeks on it. Every brush stroke felt like a heartbeat. I painted the old swing in our backyard, the one she loved when she was 5. I painted our golden retriever, Max, who passed away when she was 10. The daffodils that bloomed outside her bedroom window every April. A soft watercolor sky held it all together. I wrapped it carefully in brown craft paper and tied it with a white satin ribbon. Inside, I slipped a small card that read, "May your future be as bright as the little girl you used to be." As I placed it in the back seat of my car, my heart felt full. I imagined her face lighting up when she opened it. I imagined her hugging me, maybe even crying a little. I imagined wrong. The party was nothing like the birthdays I used to throw for her. No backyard barbecues. No homemade cake. No streamers taped up with love. This party was glossy. Her mother, Lauren, had gone all out, white linen tables under a massive tent. A catered buffet, a DJ. Madison had an entire table just for gifts, stacked high with designer bags and expensive wrapping paper. Everything screamed money, everything. Except me. I stood there in my old gray cardigan, holding the painting like it was made of glass. No one really noticed when I arrived. And that was okay. I wasn't there for them. Madison wore a tight pink dress and heels higher than I could ever manage. She floated from table to table, laughing loudly, taking selfies, surrounded by friends who barely acknowledged me. Eventually, Lauren noticed me and forced a polite smile. "Oh, you made it," she said, like I was a distant cousin, not the woman who once changed her child's diapers. I handed her the gift and smiled gently. "Where should I?" "You can just put it with the others," she said, already turning away. But I did in single quotes. Something inside me told me to wait. I wanted to give it to Madison myself. I needed to. When it was finally time to open gifts, a crowd gathered. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. Madison ripped through boxes, designer bags, cash cards, AirPods. Then she reached mine. I saw her pause. My wrapping wasn't fancy. It was simple, handmade. "Oh, this one's from my Nana," she said, forcing a smile. She unwrapped it, opened the box, held up the painting. Silence. Then she laughed. "Are you serious?" she said, holding it up like a joke. "A painting? That's it? I guess it was cheaper than buying a real gift." Her friend snickered. Someone muttered, "Vintage vibes, I guess." Lauren glanced at me briefly, uncomfortable, but said nothing. I stood there frozen. My hands hung useless at my sides. "It's sweet, I guess," Madison added with a shrug, propping the painting against a table leg like a forgotten decoration. And then everyone moved on. No one looked at me. No one noticed my face. That's the thing about being invisible. No one sees you when you're hurting. I turned and walked back to my car. Every step felt heavy, like I was dragging years behind me. Years of baking birthday cakes alone. Years of kissing scraped knees better. Years of whispering prayers over unpaid bills so she could have ballet shoes, paint supplies, summer camp, anything she dreamed of. I sat in the driver's seat with the door closed and the engine off. I didn't cry out loud. I didn't sob. I just stared at my hands on the steering wheel as a single tear slipped down and landed right on my wedding band. That's when I realized something. That painting was the most honest thing I had left to give. And she didn't see it. None of them did. Not really, but I would never forget. When I got home that night, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight into the kitchen, set my purse on the counter, and stood there in the dark. The silence wrapped around me like an old friend. No laughter, no music. No voices telling me to smile more. No one asking if I was okay. I opened the cupboard, took out a chipped teacup, filled it with tap water, and sat at the table where I used to help Madison with her homework, where she once sat cross-legged, hair in a ponytail, asking me what colors she should use in her drawings. I glanced toward my painting corner. The easel stood empty. The table beside it cluttered with brushes, and dried-out tubes of paint had been untouched since the day I finished her birthday gift. That painting, it took me weeks. Weeks of aching wrists and blurred vision. Weeks of waking up in the middle of the night because I suddenly thought of one more detail to add. She called it cheap. And they laughed. I stared into my teacup, my reflection barely visible in the ripples. Then I stood up and walked down the hallway to the drawer, where I kept the folder labeled College Fund, Madison. It was thick, stuffed with documents, receipts, and printouts from the savings account I'd built slowly over 12 long years. Every deposit, every transfer, every sacrifice. I skipped new clothes, skipped haircuts, canceled cable. Every time I set that money aside, I told myself, it'll be worth it. She's worth it. I turned on my old desktop computer, the one I barely used anymore, and logged into the banking portal. I typed in the password, the same one I'd used since the day I opened the account for Madison. The balance blinked on the screen. I stared at it for a long time. I knew exactly what every dollar had cost me. Then I clicked transfer, not to Madison, not to the college fund, to me. To my personal checking account. I watched the progress bar inch forward, slow, almost like it was giving me time to change my mind. But I did in single quotes, not this time. Transfer complete. I closed the folder, shut the drawer, turned off the computer. No one needed to know. Not yet. I wasn't doing it out of spite, not for revenge. It was something else, a quiet decision made in the middle of deep humiliation. For the first time in my life, I chose me. Not my daughter, not my granddaughter. Not the idea of what a good grandmother should be. Just me. I made a proper cup of tea, this time warm, with honey. I sat in the quiet, sipped slowly, and let the silence mend a small piece of me. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. The next morning, I wasn't sure if the night before had really happened. I shuffled into the kitchen, slippers scuffing against the linoleum, and stared at the computer like it was some kind of ghost. The bank account was real. The transfer was real. The money was in my name now, not hers. I thought I'd feel guilt, but I didn't. There was only a strange, unfamiliar stillness in my chest. Not peace exactly, just the absence of chaos. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Hi, Nana. Can I stop by today? Miss you. I stared at the screen for a long time. She hadn't called me Nana in months, maybe longer. I didn't answer right away. 2 hours later, there she was. Madison stood on my porch holding a tray of cookies from that expensive bakery downtown. The one I could never afford but always admired through the window when we walked past. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup lighter than usual, her smile just a little too bright to be real. Nana, she said sweetly, wrapping her arms around me. Before I could even react, I stiffened. My body remembered the party, her voice ringing out in front of her friends, her laughter cutting into me like shards of cold glass. Still, I let her hug me. She smelled like expensive shampoo and sugar. Nothing like childhood anymore. I was just thinking about you, she said, walking into the kitchen the same way she used to when she was little. I wanted to apologize about the party. I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean what I said. She sat at the table and folded her hands. Her nails were perfect. Her phone glowed softly in her lap. I shouldn't have said that about the painting, she continued. It was really sweet of you. It's actually beautiful. I nodded slowly, trying to read her face. Was this real? I wanted it to be. I've missed you, she added. I know I haven't been around. Things just got busy. But I'm here now. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes shimmered, almost like tears. I've been thinking a lot about college, she said quietly. About CalArts. I know the fund is complicated now, but I just want us to be close again. I'm not here for the money, Nana, I swear. I miss us. Her words wrapped around me like ivy, soft, familiar, dangerous. Something loosened in my chest. Maybe she was growing up. Maybe the shame from the party had stirred something real inside her. Maybe I'd been too harsh. After all, she was young, stupid. We all are at some point. I'll think about things, I told her gently. But I'm glad you're here, she smiled, the big one. The same smile she had at 7 when she used to draw me rainbows and write I love you. Nana and shaky crayon. We ate cookies. She stayed for dinner. She helped wash the dishes and asked about my latest painting. She even brought up childhood memories, the swing, Max, the daffodils. My heart softened. It began to believe again. Later that night, I opened the college fund folder. I didn't transfer anything, but I thought about it. More than I wanted to admit. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she'd learned something. Or maybe I just wanted her love so badly that I was willing to be wrong. I didn't sleep well. Her voice replayed in my head. I'm not here for the money, Nana, I swear. And yet, louder than her words was the echo of that birthday party, her laugh, the cheap shot. Still, I pushed the doubt down and buried it deep. Because sometimes it feels easier to believe a lie that feels like love than to accept a truth that leaves you alone. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I found out. One of those days where nothing feels important, cloudy, quiet, ordinary. Madison had stopped by that morning with her laptop and a smile. She said she needed help printing a scholarship form. I'd been the tech person in the family since the 90s. Even if now I could barely update a phone, she left after lunch. Rushing off to meet friends, I stayed behind, washing the few dishes we'd used, humming an old jazz tune we both used to love. I remember thinking, maybe this is healing. Maybe we're really rebuilding something. Then I went into the study. Her laptop was still there, open, humming softly, the screen glowing. I was going to close it, just shut it and text her. But something on the screen caught my eye. A chat window was open. A messaging app I didn't recognize. At the top it read, Madison, chatting with Emmy. Every instinct told me to look away. But something deeper, something protective, something primal made me read. The last message hit me like a slap. Don't worry, she's falling for it. I've been sweet. Cried a bit. Told her I missed our bond. Classic emotional bait. She always melts with that family crap. My hands began to shake. Another message popped up below it. Fresh and merciless, just need a couple more visits. She's already thinking about putting the fund back. I know it, told you. She's predictable. I'll be in CalArts by fall, manifesting. I stared at the words. They weren't just cruel. They were calculated. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a slip. It was a plan. The visits, the hugs, the stories about Max and the daffodils. Every tear, every cookie, every word had been part of a script meant to use me. I don't know how long I stood there, minutes, maybe hours. Eventually my legs carried me to the sofa. I sat down slowly, the laptop still open on my lap, the words burning into me like neon signs. Her voice replayed in my head, Nana, I missed you, over and over. And every time, it sounded more hollow than the last. I felt cold. Like someone had turned off the sun. How did I not see it? How did I fall for it again? I stared at her messages, full of emojis and exclamation points. And they didn't even sound like the girl I raised. She sounded like a stranger. Worse, like a predator. Someone deliberately aiming for my emotions. Twisting my heart, using love as a weapon. I wanted to scream. But no sound came out. Instead, I closed the laptop slowly. Carefully, like shutting a casket. The grief that washed over me was real. But this time, it wasn't grief for someone I'd lost. It was grief for someone who had never really existed. The version of Madison I'd carried in my head, the sweet, curious child with paint on her cheeks, who once told me I was her best friend. That girl was gone. Maybe she'd been gone longer than I was willing to admit. I sat in silence for the rest of the day, letting the truth settle into my bones. This wasn't disappointment. This was betrayal. And it wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Later that evening, I walked to my painting corner and pulled the cloth off the canvas she had mocked at the party. There it was, our story in brush strokes. The old swing, the dog, the daffodils, and all I could hear now was the word she'd used. But it was never about money. Not for me. It was about memory, about effort, about love. And suddenly, I understood something I hadn't before. She hadn't rejected the painting. She had rejected me. I leaned closer to the canvas and whispered, my voice steady for the first time. You're not the one who's worthless. And neither am I. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat in my old rocking chair in the living room with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The house was dark, except for the faint yellow glow of the porch light slipping through the curtains. It amazed me how quiet pain could be. How it didn't always scream. Sometimes it just sat beside you, breathing with you, waiting to be acknowledged. Her words echoed in my head again and again. She always melts with that family crap. I thought about all the times I had melted. When Lauren slammed doors and called me overbearing, I let it go. When Madison stopped visiting as much, I told myself she was just busy. When I was forgotten on holidays, I baked cookies and dropped them off anyway. I melted because love made me soft. Because I believed in forgiveness, in loyalty, in second chances. But now I saw it for what it really was, survival. I had spent a lifetime giving pieces of myself away so no one would leave. I gave until there was nothing left. And then I gave more, and for what? So my granddaughter could laugh behind my back? So I could be manipulated into handing over my life savings like some gullible, lonely old woman. That night, I felt rage. Not loud rage. Not destructive rage. It was quiet, focused, the kind of rage that sharpens you. The kind that strips away illusions and shows you who you've been and who you're done being. Sometime around early morning, I stood up and walked back to the painting she had called cheap. I stood in front of it for a long time. The memories on that canvas didn't hurt anymore. They weren't bruises. They were proof. Proof that I had loved. That I had given my best. That I had been real, even when they weren't. I whispered, "You're not going into a closet." Not anymore, and I meant it. I turned to my bookshelf and pulled out an old camera I hadn't used in years. I took a photo of the painting. Then I sat at my desk, turned on the computer, and began to type. I found an online group for older women artists, a quiet corner of the internet where people shared their work, their stories, and encouragement. My fingers trembled as I uploaded the photo. In the caption, I wrote, "This painting was called cheap by someone I love, but it was painted with everything I had left. Every brush stroke is a memory. Every color, a piece of my heart." Maybe it's not enough for some people, but it was everything to me. I hit post. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few likes. A kind comment or two. That wasn't the point. The point was that I had finally used my voice, not just my brushes, to tell the truth. I left the computer on. Went back to the living room, made tea, and sat quietly. And for the first time in a very long while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt awake. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was already streaming through the curtains, casting long golden lines across the floor. My tea sat cold and untouched on the end table. I stretched stiff, but strangely energized, like something inside me had shifted. I shuffled to the computer, still not expecting much. Then I saw it. The screen glowed with notifications, likes, comments, shares. I blinked. The painting I posted, that painting caught fire overnight. Not just a small spark of sympathy. People were seeing it. Really seeing it. I clicked into the comments. This made me cry. There's so much emotion here. Whoever called this cheap doesn't know what love is. Do you sell prints? I want this hanging in my home. Please tell me you're exhibiting somewhere. My heart started pounding. I felt flushed, lightheaded. I kept scrolling. Messages poured in, direct messages from strangers, mostly women, mothers, grandmothers, daughters, women who said they saw themselves in my story. Women who had been told they were too sentimental, too giving, too soft. But this painting was power. Then one message stopped me cold. Hi, Helen. I'm a curator for a small gallery in Brooklyn. Your piece stopped me in my tracks. Would you consider exhibiting it? We'd be honored. I read it 3 times. Brooklyn, a gallery. I looked back at the painting, still leaning quietly against the wall near the dining room, half in shadow. The swing, the dog, the daffodils. My memories now public. My hurt had turned into something beautiful. With trembling hands, I replied, "Yes, I'd be honored to." Within hours, more messages arrived. Art magazines, influencers. A woman from a major platform asking if I'd be willing to do a feature story. It felt like I'd tossed a tiny stone into a still lake and somehow caused a tidal wave. Later that afternoon, the curator from Brooklyn called me. Her name was Dana. She told me she wanted to fly in and pick up the painting herself. "I want to treat this piece with the care it deserves," she said. "It's not just art, it's a story people need to hear." She asked me about the title. I hesitated. Then I smiled. "Call it The Rejected Gift." Dana paused. Then she said, "Perfect." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and let it all wash over me. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about Madison anymore. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I had given away too freely. About taking what had been dismissed and turning it into something untouchable. That night, I didn't just sleep, I dreamed of color, of light, of finally being seen. 2 weeks later, I stood in the middle of a sunlit gallery in Brooklyn. My hands trembled as people moved around me, murmuring, studying, pausing longer than I ever thought they would. My painting hung on a clean white wall, simply framed, softly lit. It looked powerful not because of technique or style, but because of the story behind it. My story, The Rejected Gift by Helen Carterry, must have stared at that small placard for a full 5 minutes. Dana came up beside me and whispered, We had over 300 people at the opening. It's the most attention we've had all season. I blinked, stunned. She smiled. And there's more. She led me to her office in the back, a quiet room filled with sketches and portfolios. On her desk lay a printed email. A private collector in Manhattan wanted to buy the piece, $20,000. Cashed. I stared at the number. It didn't feel real. Dana washed my face. You don't have to sell it, she said gently. But if you do, this could fund a new studio, travel, materials, whatever you want. You have something rare, Helen, a voice and a heart. My lips trembled. For so long, I had believed my voice didn't matter, that my heart was a burden, that I existed only to carry other people's dreams. And now, here I was, my pain had value. My truth had worth. I nodded. Tell him yes. We sealed the deal that day. I signed my first artist's contract, my hand barely steady enough to hold the pen. Before the painting left the gallery, Dana insisted on taking a photo of me standing beside it. Smile like you mean it, she said. And I did, for the first time in what felt like years. I really meant it. Back home in Vermont, things were different. Lauren called out of the blue, saying she'd heard my painting was getting attention. No apology. No congratulations. Just curiosity. I didn't give her details. Then Madison showed up. She hadn't called. Just knocked on my door one afternoon, looking tired, her eyes glossy with tears. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat at the same kitchen table where she used to eat cereal in her pajamas, where I'd helped her build science projects out of cardboard and glue, where she once told me I was her favorite person in the world. She folded her hands and looked at me with the same face I'd watched grow for 18 years. I saw the painting, she said. People online are talking about you, she said. I said nothing. She hesitated. I wanted to say sorry again. She glanced up at me. For the birthday party. For that and for everything else. Still, I said nothing. She looked down. Her hands were fidgeting now. She wasn't crying. Just waiting. I messed up, Nana, she said quietly. I was stupid, selfish. I took you for granted. But I want to fix things. I leaned back, arms folded. What do you mean, fix things? I mean, she swallowed. I still want to go to CalArts. And maybe if things are different now, maybe you could. There it was. The truth bleeding through the apology. Still chasing the money. Still chasing me, but this time, I wasn't chasing back. I stood up. She looked at me, confused. I didn't shout. I didn't cry, I said, calmly. You called my love cheap. You pretended to care because you thought I'd fund your dream again. You treated me like a transaction. She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. You lost something that day, Madison. Not just money. You lost the one person who believed in you no matter what. I walked to the door and opened it. You want something from me again? Earn it. She stood slowly, lips pressed into a thin line. Pride wounded. I didn't expect a hug. I didn't get one. She left without another word. I watched her walk down the porch, back to her car. Back to whatever story she'd built to convince herself she deserved it all. And I went back inside alone, but finally whole. A week passed after Madison walked out of my house without saying goodbye. I didn't hear from her. Not a text. Not a call. And you know what? I didn't expect to. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It felt clean. Like space being cleared for something better. Then one morning, while I was sipping coffee on the porch, Lauren showed up. She didn't knock. Just barged in like it was still years ago and I was watching Madison after daycare. Her heels clicked sharply against the wood floor. Her hair was perfect. Her blazer stiff. Her expression sharp. I just came from Madison's, she said. No hello. I took another sip and waited. She's crying, Lauren continued. She says you humiliated her. That you made her feel like trash. That you're throwing her away over a painting. I said nothing. She told me about the money, Lauren added. About the college fund. She said you took it back without warning. Still, I stayed quiet. I let her talk. Lauren threw her hands up. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're sacrificing her future. You're punishing her for being young and stupid, for making one bad joke at a party at that. I stood slowly. I walked to the counter, picked up the thick folder labeled College Fund, Madison, and held it up. This, I said calmly, is 12 years of my life. Every coupon clipped. Every doctor's visit skipped. Every winter I kept the heat low to save $50. This folder is my sacrifices, and she spat on it. She was upset. Lauren said quickly, no. I interrupted. She was cruel. And then she came back and played nice to get it back. She didn't apologize. She performed and I almost fell for it. Lauren crossed her arms. So what now? You let her dreams fall apart? I looked her straight in the eye. She's 18. She's not 5. If her dreams are real, she'll fight for them. Work for them. Not manipulate a woman who loves her. Lauren's face flushed. guilt, anger, I couldn't tell which. I raised you better, I said softly. And I raised her better. But somewhere along the way, you both learned how to take and forgot how to give back. Lauren looked away. I walked to the desk, pulled out a new folder and set it down. The label was written in fresh black marker, Fondo de Libertad, Helen Carter. I'm using the money now, I said. Not on anyone else. On me. She stared at it. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I gave you both decades, I continued. Now I'm taking a few years back. Lauren finally whispered, you really won't pay for CalArts? No, I said without hesitation. I already paid in full with everything I had. And you threw it away. She left in silence, and I poured myself another cup of coffee. My hands didn't shake this time. They say when one door closes, another opens. But sometimes it isn't about doors. Sometimes it's about the walls crumbling down so you can finally see the sky. A few days after Lauren stormed out, I received an email from an editor at the New York Chronicle. She'd read about the gallery exhibition, seen my painting, and wanted to feature me in a piece titled Late Bloomers, Women Who Found Their Voice After. I laughed when I read the subject line, late bloomer, maybe, or maybe I'd always had something to say. I'd just been talked over too many times to hear myself. The interview was over the phone. The editor was warm, curious, kind. She asked about the painting, what it meant, what led to it, my journey as an artist. I told her everything, though not about Madison, my name. I wasn't there to expose anyone. I was there to tell the truth. My painting was dismissed, I said. Not because it lacked value, but because the person it was meant for didn't recognize love when it was right in front of her. She was quiet for a moment before she replied. That's going to resonate with a lot of people. The article went live 2 days later. It exploded. Messages poured in from women all across the country, grandmothers, mothers, even young women who said they saw their future in my past and wanted to change direction before it was too late. I was invited to speak at a virtual conference for women over 50. A publishing company emailed me about a possible memoir. My inbox turned into a garden of courage and confession messages from strangers who felt more like sisters, and then came the call. Paris. An art collective that worked with female artists from around the world wanted to feature the rejected gift in a traveling exhibit across Europe. They would fly me out, cover everything. Your story is exactly what the world needs right now, the woman on the line said, her French accent soft and reverent. After I hung up, I sat very still for a long time. I wasn't just seen, I was heard. And not for being someone's mother or grandmother, but for being Helen. That night, I walked into my studio and pulled out a blank canvas. I didn't paint Madison. I didn't paint the swing, or Max, or the daffodils. I painted a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, arms stretched wide, wind in her hair, looking out over a vast horizon with no fear in her eyes. I titled it Freedom. I hung it in the hallway, right where the college fund folder used to be. Because this life, this peace, this power was the education I had been denied. But I earned it anyway, brush stroke by brush stroke, breath by breath. The world doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always reward good people, kind people, people who give everything they have to others. I used to believe it did. I used to believe in fairness and the idea that if you gave enough, something good would eventually come back to you, but that wasn't true. At least it hadn't been for me. Not until now. Paris was a dream. I walked into that gallery on the Seine feeling like a different person, like someone who had never known rejection, never known silence. The city, the lights, the people, everything was brighter than I'd ever imagined. The artists around me were young, beautiful, full of energy. They had the kind of futures I once dreamed about for myself a lifetime ago, but I didn't want that life anymore. I didn't need bright lights to tell me I was worthy. I already knew I was. When my painting was revealed that evening, I watched people stop in their tracks, silent, staring. Some cried. Some stood perfectly still, as if trying to absorb every ounce of emotion I had poured into that canvas. I wasn't just showing them my art, I was showing them me. I never knew how much it could hurt to finally be seen, to be recognized for something I had always given away so freely. The love, the sacrifice, the pieces of myself I buried so others could rise. But in that gallery, no one expected me to be anything but myself. Later, standing beside the same painting Madison once mocked, I received more offers, more invitations. A major gallery in London wanted to feature my work. A woman from an art collection in Australia asked to include my pieces in an exhibit on female empowerment. I was invited to speak, to share my story, to share my art. The emails kept coming. The calls never stopped. And in each one, I heard the same thing in different words. Your story matters. Your voice is important, but none of it mattered as much as what came next. One evening after the Paris show, I walked along the river, the city lights shimmering in the distance. It felt unreal, like a dream I never thought I'd be allowed to touch. I sat alone at a small cafe. A glass of wine in front of me. A slice of bread on the table. The world felt vast. And for the first time, I didn't feel small inside it. I was no longer the quiet woman fading into the background. No longer invisible. I was Helen Carter. An artist. A creator. A woman who finally understood her own worth. And as the night settled softly around me, I felt something I had waited a lifetime to feel. Peace. I hadn't just broken free from Madison, or from Lauren, or even from the world that had made me feel invisible. I had broken free from myself. From the version of me who believed she wasn't enough. From the woman who let everyone else take while she quietly emptied herself. I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. When I flew back to Vermont, everything felt different. The house felt lighter, brighter, like it was finally breathing with me instead of holding me still. I started working on a new series of paintings. Each one reflected the growth I'd gone through, the healing, the reclaiming. I painted women now, but not just the soft, nurturing versions I'd always leaned toward before. These women were strong, bold, fierce. Some stood tall against mountains. Others lifted their arms to the sky, unafraid to be seen. I was no longer the woman who stayed quiet, the one who allowed herself to be forgotten. I wasn't invisible anymore, and neither was my art. But the true gift, the real freedom, came when I finally took my place in this world. Without hesitation, without apology, I had become the woman I was always meant to be, and that was priceless. I'd been back from Paris for a few weeks, and everything had changed, not just around me, but inside me. The emails kept coming. The offers didn't slow down. Art collectors, galleries, press outlets. Everyone wanted a piece of my story, my work, my voice. It was surreal, and yet it felt right. But I didn't chase fame. I didn't chase recognition. What mattered now wasn't applause or money. It was the quiet moments, being fully at home in my own skin, unburdened, unapologetic. Finally at peace. One evening, I stood on the porch of my Vermont home and watched the sun sink below the horizon. Fields stretched out before me. Trees swayed gently. A small creek cut through the land. The wind carried the scent of pine, and the world felt alive. Alive in a way it hadn't in years. I didn't know where Madison was anymore. I'd stopped asking. Lauren hadn't called. Maybe they were still angry. Maybe they were still mourning the woman I used to be, the one who gave endlessly, without question, without ever asking for anything in return. But that woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who knew her worth. I painted every day now. When I picked up my brush, I didn't think about Madison. I thought about what came next. I painted women with open arms, standing tall, gazing into the unknown without fear in their eyes. And when those paintings were finished, I didn't hide them in my studio. I shared them with the world. They spoke to women like me, women who had been silenced or overlooked, women who had lived in the shadows of others, women who had been told their love wasn't enough. That's when I finally understood what had really happened. I had spent years giving my heart away, never realizing I was the one who needed to be seen. Then, one day, something unexpected arrived in the mail, a small envelope, a simple return address. Madison's name written in careful, familiar handwriting. My chest tightened as I opened it. I hadn't heard from her in months. I didn't know what to expect. The letter was short. Nana, I can't undo the hurt I caused you. And I'm not asking for anything. I've been working on myself. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I do want to say I'm sorry. I've been selfish, and I regret how I treated you. I hope one day you'll see me differently. Love, Madison. I read it twice, letting the words settle. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. I had let go of the pain, of the expectations, of the years spent trying to hold something that was never meant for me to carry. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the same drawer where the college fund folder once lived. The thing that had consumed so much of my life, and I closed the drawer gently. The money was gone, but so was the weight that came with it. And with that weight gone, I no longer needed validation from anyone but myself. Over the next few months, I traveled. I went back to Europe, this time to places I never imagined I'd see. I discovered new cities, met new people, and found beauty everywhere I went. I laughed more. I loved more. And I painted with a freedom I had never known before. One afternoon, while wandering through an art market in Spain, I met a man. A kind man. His name was Thomas. He was an artist too older than me. With a gentle soul and a deep appreciation for life's small moments, we talked for hours about art, about loss, about love. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people speaking openly and honestly. We saw each other a few more times, sharing stories about the lives we had lived and the ones we hoped to live now. He wasn't looking for someone to complete him. And neither was I, but together, we found something that felt real. It wasn't about filling a void. It was about creating something beautiful from what was already there. And when we eventually parted, I didn't feel lonely. Not anymore. Because deep down, I knew I already had everything I needed, not in anyone else, but within myself. Back in Vermont, I stood in front of the canvas I'd been working on for months. It was a portrait of a woman, older, yes, but strong. Her eyes were steady. Her arms were stretched wide, as if she were embracing the world. She was fully alive, fully present. There were no restraints on her. No shame, no guilt. Only peace. I titled it Freedom because that's what I had finally found. It was mine. All of it. And it was priceless. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.